Hey everybody, welcome back to C&G Performance. Today we're going to be breaking down this 440.
Because it's making knock-knock jokes and none of them are funny. And don't get excited, the tunnel ram's not staying. Welcome back everybody, glad to have you here. If it's your first time, reach right down there, like and subscribe. Leave us a comment, we want to hear from you guys. What are you building? Do you like what we're building? Do you not like what we're building? This is our 1987 Dodge D100 regular cab short bed that we refer to as Knuckles. As you can see, it doesn't look like an 87 anymore. This truck was introduced in our world back in 2012. We got it from a gentleman out in Arkansas by the name of Alan Yielding. Still friends with him to this day, he's a great guy. When we got it from him, it already had a big block in it. Fast forward to 2014, just before we got our assignment to Germany, I was loading this up on the trailer to bring it home, so store it. And the 440 that was in this truck decided it wanted to eject the crankshaft. Not once, but in two pieces, right behind the number 2 connecting rod. So we drug the thing home, it sat behind my mother's place. 4 years later, in 2018, I got a brand new idea. We had another 440 that she had bought, I think the year before. We did a cam swap in it and then just kind of left it alone. Well, we finally had a reason for it. So over the next 52 days, starting I think March 8th of 2018, I completely blew this truck apart, scattered it all over this garage floor that you see in front of you, and completely rebuilt it. It got a fresh 440, another 727. I grabbed an 8 3/4 rear end from a junkyard out of a 71 Dodge D100 Adventurer, a gas tank from an 89 Dodge Ram Charger, rewired the complete wiring harness under the engine bay, got everything outfitted and stripped, and first fired the truck May 28th, 4 days before the event that we were aiming for. It was an all Mopar event weekend. They had a car show, 2 bracket race classes on Saturday night and on Sunday. Just as soon as we got done with the event at Centerville, I strapped a nitrous plate to this truck to see how fast we could make it go. The answer? 770s in the 8th mile on a 100 shot. This truck weighs 4,100 pounds. Do the math. This thing was making some pretty decent power. With a 355 rear gear, I can still drive it on the street, to drive it to work. It was a great package. Through the rest of the 2018 season, I took this truck to a whole bunch of different drag events. We went out to a street race event out in Nocona, Texas. We took it to Abilene. Well, you made passes in Abilene in it, in a streetcar class.
Yeah.
Ran mid-8s, I think 850s. Tulsa, Oklahoma, entered in another Mopar event. We swapped the rear gear, put a 486 in the back, and if it hadn't been for a clogged fuel filter, this truck would have been in the 7s on motor. But the 2018 season came to a close. I just enjoyed driving it. Still had a heater, had a radio, and in one of the most boring spectacles you could ever imagine, I was driving this thing home. It got hot and scored the number 4 connecting rod bearing. That kind of ended our fun with that 440 that I built. But we had another 440 sitting around from our other drag truck that already had aluminum heads, already had a solid roller cam. It just needed a home. I had been saving it to put back in that drag truck, but I already had this one ready to go. We had just finished an overdrive swap in this truck 2 weeks before that original 440 took a dive on us. So we just strapped our aluminum headed big block to it. That brings us to today. That second 440 with the solid roller and aluminum heads, suddenly it doesn't want to turn over anymore either. Not to worry. That original 440 you heard us talking about, that got hot and scored the rod bearing, it just got back from the machine shop a few days ago. The crank's been turned, we've got all new bearings, gaskets, and seals. We decked the block to bring the pistons up further in the bore. We have a brand new set of aluminum heads from 440 Source. We're gonna slam it back together, put it back in this truck so we can have our muscle truck back. This 700-pound hood. Okay. So believe it or not, Eric invited us back in his shop again. What was he thinking? And for the record, if you're having a hard time hearing me, I'm sorry. It's only 105 degrees outside. We have every fan in the shop running, so I'll apologize. But what we have here is the 440 that got hot thanks to a faulty radiator cap, scored the number 4 connecting rod bearing, and kind of touched up the number 4 journal on the crankshaft. So we just got the block back from our friends down at Big State Grinding. We have an entire table of parts, and I'm pretty excited about it. We do have a brand new set of seal power rings for this motor, and it'll give us a chance to dial in the end gap that we actually want. I think for a short while, I am going to leave the nitro system in the truck. That way when we want to party, we can really party. But let's get this thing rolled over. Let's start gapping rings and fitting them to the bores, which is going to take forever because there's 2 rings for each cylinder and it's going to take a while. So let's get started. So we'll slide our ring into the bore and then we'll rotate it. To make sure that it's sitting square in the deck, what we're going to do, we'll take our piston and we'll push it down in the bore until the skirt bottoms out. About right there. And now we know for sure that that ring is square in the bore in relation to the piston. Then we'll take our brand new feeler gauges, if I can find them. Wow, that's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. 35 and 15. Still a mile. What am I doing wrong? So you know those moments that you have when you think you're a genius and you're really not? I had one of those moments. Now, what seems like to have been just a few seconds for all of you guys has been about a month and a half for us here in the shop. Let's start with the obvious. So if you were paying attention just a few seconds ago, you would have noticed that first set of rings that we were trying to gap in this block, about 100 thou gapped already. That was these. Initially, we thought that somehow somebody made a mistake, and we ended up with a set of piston rings for either a 400 or a 383 Chrysler, having that much of a gap. So, in comes this set of rings, also for a 440 Chrysler, and guess what? They had the exact same gaps as the first set. In comes set number 3, and this is where the drama really starts to unwind. So, ordered these July 1st. I didn't get them until July 31st. And then I had a stroke of conscience. I said, you know what? What are the chances that you could really get away with running a 20 over ring on a stock piston? Oh, did I fail to mention that? Yeah, so we somehow stumbled across that discovery. My buddy Eric used the wrong tool to do the wrong job the right way, and we found out that this thing had been honed 20 thousandths over. So that's what necessitated the rings. That's why we had the huge gaps. But wait, there's more. I feel like Billy Mays. Not only did we make an astonishing discovery about our rings, but after putting the brain to it, it made sense to me after doing a lot of homework and talking to some people that I trust that you can't and shouldn't ever, unless you just like to live on the edge, try to run a 20 over ring on a stock piston. So, had to wait another week, ordered a set of 20 over Silverlight. These are stock cast piston, just 20 thousandths over. There were 3 different compression heights. I chose the one in the middle. Should be fine. So now we actually get 2 gap rings and maybe, I don't know, just maybe, continue assembling the bottom end of this 440 so that maybe at some point this summer my truck will run. Okay, there it is. I see it.
It does good or doesn't do good. I'm integrity testing these bearings real quick. Got an ops checker. It'll be fine.
Fifth one, I should have the routine down pretty good. Yeah. So, day 2 being on this thing, we did a couple of things off camera, as you can probably see. Got the oil pan buttoned up finally, we got the balancer put on, timing cover put on. So we are clicking along good. I'm at the point now, I'm actually ready to throw the heads on this thing because I'm just so antsy. And to kick that off, I wanted to reach over here and grab the head gaskets that I chose to go with. I've ran Cometic on a lot of different projects. They're a little pricey. They will put a bite on the wallet, but honestly, they'll take some punishment. These are a 27 thousandths crush. I was doing some rough math last night before I left. The pistons sit roughly about 37 thousandths below the decks, plus 27,000 crush head gaskets at a 4.350 bore, and our 80cc combustion chambers on our 440 Source Stealth heads. We skosh in the neighborhood of about 11.5 to 1 compression. So we'll slide them right over our dowels. Grab one of our brand new Stealth aluminum heads. I guess I've known about these for a couple of years. I like them because they look like stock castings from the outside looking in, especially once you splash some orange all over them, because they have the same factory embossments that you would see on a cast like 906 or 452 head. They have done a few improvements here and there, like they've raised the exhaust port floors a little bit. They've got their own spring lock and retainer package. I think these are 7-degree locks. These will work just fine with the hydraulic flat tappet cam that we have from Comp, which, if I remember right, it is a 262, 270 duration, 462, 470 lift on 110-degree lobe separation angle. With that all said, I am antsy. These almost weigh as much as a stock iron casting. Get out of the way. Boom. Oh, that looks good. Eric took the liberty of getting our heads and the rest of the block painted. Looks fantastic. And if I'm hard to hear again, I'm sorry, because it's fall and it's still over 100 around here. But we are at a good point where we got the heads on, water pumps on, housings on, lower pulleys on. Like, we're pretty much there. And one of the last things that I wanted to go ahead and do was start putting the rest of the valvetrain in. And luckily, we had this cool cam and lifter organizer box that's going to come in really handy, because it's even labeled in here. It says left front bank. I know you can't see it. Left front bank, right front bank. And this is kind of crucial with a hydraulic flat tappet, so that you put the lifter back on the lobe that it has hardened itself into a pattern with. This saves us quite a bit of time, actually. We don't have to break in a new cam and run it between $2,000 and $2,500 for 20 minutes or nothing like that. These are already worn in to their lobes. We will go ahead and sauce everything up with some assembly lube and make sure we're filling this thing full of good zinc additive and good oil on that first fire. Not just for the cam, but since we do have a lot of other new components in here, bearings, rings, those sort of things, to make sure we break this motor in with good lubrication. As far as the cam is concerned, it'll be like it never left. So yeah, we'll go through here and we'll sauce all this up with some assembly lube, drop the valley pan on, and just kind of loosely stick the rocker shafts and push rods and all that on there. We don't want to put too much pressure on the lifters just yet till we're ready to fire it. That way it doesn't bleed all the oil back out of them, since they are hydraulic. And then I believe we'll get the center section for the rear end handled. We'll doctor the transmission a little bit. We'll be in a good position. We'll be in real good shape. So, not only do we have a brand new motor, I got the transmission right there. It's a A518 automatic overdrive from I think it was a 92 Cummins diesel that we cut the original bell housing off of, literally with a sawzall, just sawed that thing right off, and bolted on the J&W Ultra Bell so it would make to the back of the big block. And that thing's been awesome. Having overdrive behind a big block in a hot rod street truck has been such a cool feature, but I didn't realize I did more homework after the fact. Evidently the pressure governor on the output shaft kind of works in conjunction with the valve body to control shift timing, and it's still got the governor for a diesel application. So at wide open throttle, it shifts at like 3,100 RPM instead of 5,800 where I'd rather it be. So I've got a donor trans over here. I'm going to take some parts out of here in a little bit. But coming back to our center section, this is our 8 3/4 center chunk from our truck. This is actually the center chunk that came in the rear end direct from the salvage yard when I first got it. I just got the carrier pulled out. It's got the 355 ring gear on it, and Detroit is going to help us out today because we have got a Detroit truetrac center section that we're going to slap our 355 ring gear onto and stuff it back in here. Okay, so right for loose. They're all out, and should take just a tiny little bit of persuasion from Dr. Love here, and it falls right off. That ring means the fries are done. I've had the Detroit truetrac in the freezer for literally a month. Golly. Yeah, we don't need that. Look at this, boys and girls. I've seen these things in magazines, everything else. Never seen one in person. And of course, I've never seen a frozen one. That thing's kind of cold. I'm gonna put that down because that's really cold. Look at the frost growing on it. Look at that. I wonder though, I'm curious, if the bearings that have been out in the heat all day will just slide right on, because that would make my whole day. You know, we got a frozen carrier here. I got warm bearings. Science says it'll work. I'm glad they made these so light. All right, put the adjuster locks back on, and this thing will be done, ready to go. All hope you guys can hear me because it is 100 and plenty out here. My buddy Eric came by yesterday and we did get the governor off the back of our donor 727. As you can see, we got the overdrive put completely together. We got the donor off of this one. We got the big heavy one, which is right here, off of our overdrive that, if you remember, came from behind a diesel. And since it came from behind a diesel, not only is it physically bigger in the bore diameter, but it also uses a brass weight, whereas the gas motor transmissions used a smaller aluminum weight and a lighter spring. Obviously with a diesel, they don't have the RPM capability that a gas motor does in stock configuration, so they use a very heavy weight so that it'll extend in its travel sooner at a lower speed to allow for an earlier upshift. Well, that's not what we wanted in our overdrive. Since this 727 came from a gas engine motorhome, we knew it would have the correct governor and weight, and we did have to swap the whole governor. I was going to just try to swap the weight itself, but again, the diesel one physically has a bigger weight in it. As soon as I get the extension housing put back together, I'm going to pull the pump out of this one, swap it with mine, and then our overdrive is going to be ready to go. We got the extension housing back on our donor transmission, got them both flipped around, and now we're at the point where I'm going to go ahead and pull the pump out of both of these and swap between the two. And the only reason I'm changing the pump is because the last time I drove the truck, which it's been a couple years now, the pump sounded like it was just whining, crying. In either case, it can't hurt to go ahead and swap it. There we go. Set that right over there. And we'll pull the pump out of our donor and we'll slide it in the overdrive. Kind of like that. Grab our implement of torquage. So all we got left now is to take the bad pump, put it in our donor trans, and then we are ready to make this whole combination go together. It has been a lot of hard work, it really has. And I know some of you guys are out there looking at us like, well, Gary, you know, people are out there putting motors and transmissions in project cars all the time. And you're right, they are. But man, I don't know. This Texas heat sure does put a challenge in front of it. Oh my gosh. But in any case, thanks for keeping up with us. We know this episode was a long time coming. There's been a big gap in between them. It's just been one thing after another, plus the heat, man. It's just, it really wears you down. But thanks for being patient. Thanks for sticking with us. And come back for part 2 when we actually put this whole mess together and put it in the truck and take that thing out on the roads. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can catch Cassandra at MoparChick85 on Instagram. You can catch me at Gary's_garage83 on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys here soon.